There are days when life doesn't simply test you, it corners you. Things unfold too fast, too abruptly, as if a single moment were enough to reshape everything you thought was under control. You wake up believing it will be another ordinary morning, only to perceive that the ground beneath you is more steady than imagined. A sudden pressure rises inside your chest, not because of one event in particular, but because several arrive at once, as if they had been waiting for the same signal to strike together. It happens quietly. A subtle tension settles along your shoulders. A heaviness grows behind your eyes. Your breathing becomes shallow without your permission. And before any thought forms clearly, a sense of urgency takes over, pushing you to react, speak, decide, defend, respond, escape, anything, as long as it is immediate. Most people never notice the precise moment this shift begins. They feel the acceleration, but not the trigger. They sense the agitation, but not the first wave that carried it. Life becomes an accumulation of impulses, and impulses rarely lead anywhere safe. But there is a different way to inhabit these moments, one that does not depend on pretending the chaos isn't real. It begins with a simple observation. The body shows the storm long before the mind names it. The tightening in your throat, the stiffness in your jaw, the agitation in your hands, these are not random physical reactions. They are messages. They are the earliest indicators that your internal state is changing, long before any emotion fully unfolds. If you learn to pay attention, you can interrupt the chain before it gains speed. Posture is often the first line of defense. Not because standing tall magically solves anything, but because the way you position yourself shapes the way you perceive yourself. When your back collapses, your chest closes and your gaze drops, your mind follows that same direction. But when you correct your stance, open your breathing and reclaim space within your own body, something shifts. You begin to recover the sense that you are not merely carried by the moment. You can respond to it. Think of the body as the anchor of the mind. Without a firm anchor, any wave feels destructive. But when the ground beneath you holds, even strong currents lose part of their power. Strength, in this sense, is not about appearing unshaken. It is about rooting yourself deeply enough to endure what arrives. This awareness grows gradually. It does not depend on perfection or constant discipline. What matters is the recognition that your physical state influences your emotional stability. A steady breath steadies thoughts. A grounded stance steadies choices. Small adjustments create internal clarity that many procurum apenas em grandes solucos. But awareness alone is not enough. After noticing the shift in your body, you meet a second threshold, the brief instant between what you feel and what you do next. It is almost invisible, often ignored, but profoundly decisive. Every conflict escalates or dissolves in that tiny interval. Every regret or breakthrough begins there. Imagine a heated moment when words are rising fast inside you, ready to escape. The impulse urges you forward. The old pattern prepares its script. Yet, beneath the rush, there is a thin opening. A small space where time seems to stretch just enough for a choice to exist. Most people never step into that space. They move directly from feeling to reacting, as if both were inseparable. But they are not. There is always a pause, even if brief, that allows you to redirect the momentum. When you learn to inhabit that pause, your relationship with pressure transforms. Inside that silent fraction of time, the question is not, what am I supposed to do? But, what deserves to be done? One question is dictated by urgency, the other by clarity. One feeds the fire, the other removes the fuel. This is where real control begins, not in silencing emotions, but in refusing to be commanded by them. The chaotic moment still exists. The challenge still stands. But your reaction is no longer automatic. It becomes intentional, deliberate, aligned with the person you are trying to become, instead of the person the moment is trying to provoke. Here, the world does not change. You do. Pressure loses part of its authority when you no longer respond at its pace. And once you slow the pace, you start to see with more precision. What felt overwhelming becomes manageable. What felt personal becomes neutral. What felt urgent becomes simply another situation you are capable of confronting. This ability does not appear from nowhere. It grows from practice, observation, and the willingness to pause when everything urges you to rush. It is the first step toward building a mind that does not collapse under weight, but reorganizes itself inside it. And that is where the journey truly begins. Many people believe that the greatest battles happen outside, in arguments, responsibilities, crises, unexpected disruptions. But the hardest conflicts rarely begin in the world around you. They begin in the space no one sees, the place where thoughts collide, doubts echo, and emotions shift before finding a name. To understand pressure, you must understand this inner territory. Not to control every sensation or force yourself into some rigid ideal, but to recognize that what feels like chaos often starts as misinterpreted signals. A thought that arrives too fast. A fear that you didn't expect. A memory that surfaces without warning. These moments accumulate quietly, building tension layer by layer until it becomes almost unbearable. Yet beneath all this movement, there is a pattern. When the mind feels threatened, even slightly, it looks for escape routes. It pushes you to act quickly, not because the situation requires speed, but because speed feels like protection. Doing something, anything, seems safer than staying still. But haste rarely leads to clarity. It only satisfies the immediate discomfort of uncertainty. You've probably lived this before. A small disagreement that becomes a major argument, not because of the topic, but because of the internal agitation you brought into it. Or a decision taken too fast, not because it was wise, but because you wanted to silence the discomfort of hesitation. The problem never was the situation. It was the storm you carried inside. But storms can be understood. And once understood, they can be crossed with far more stability. A powerful shift happens when you stop trying to escape pressure and begin observing it instead. Not analyzing every detail, not overthinking the emotion, but simply acknowledging what is happening without immediately reacting. This creates a distance, a psychological step back, through which the mind sees more clearly than it does in the middle of the noise. Observation changes everything. When you observe, you no longer fight the emotion. You examine it. When you observe, you no longer drown in the sensation. You name it. When you observe, the situation stops being a threat and becomes information. And information is far easier to work with than fear. It is here that a subtle transformation begins. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you start asking, "What is this showing me?" One question creates resistance. The other creates direction. Pressure becomes less of an enemy and more of a form of feedback, a mirror that reveals what still needs development. This understanding leads to another truth. Discomfort is not a punishment. It is part of growth. It has always been. The moments that shaped you most deeply were rarely soft or comfortable. They were demanding. They forced you to expand into versions of yourself that you didn't yet know how to be. Pressure isn't just difficulty. It's demonstration, proof that you are entering territory where something valuable can be built. Yet embracing this idea intellectually is one thing. Living it, especially when everything feels heavy, is another. That is why grounding practices matter so much. They don't eradicate difficulty. They anchor you while difficulty passes. One of the strongest anchors is a shift in perspective, seeing challenges not as barriers, but as builders. The moment you start looking at obstacles through this lens, they lose part of their weight. They stop feeling like walls and start looking like steps. Uneven, yes, but steps nonetheless. You begin to realize that resilience is not a sudden transformation. It is a collection of small moments where you chose not to collapse. Moments where you breathed instead of exploded. Paused instead of rushed. Listened instead of attacked. These decisions may seem minor at the time, but together they shape a mind that can remain steady even when the world shakes. Another essential piece of this development is accepting that uncertainty will always exist. No amount of preparation removes unpredictability entirely, but preparation does change how you face it. When you expect the unexpected, you are not blindsided when it appears. When you understand that life shifts without warning, you stop taking shocks as personal attacks. They become part of the landscape, not exceptions to it. At this stage, calm no longer feels like a distant ideal. It becomes something more practical, a posture of the mind. It doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you are not controlled by what you feel. You allow emotions to move, but you don't hand them the steering wheel. You allow thoughts to appear, but you don't let each one dictate your direction. You acknowledge the storm, but you no longer fear it. This is not the elimination of chaos. It is the strengthening of your center. And as this center grows, a quiet confidence develops. Not loud or dramatic, but steady. A confidence that comes from knowing you can withstand pressure, not because you avoid difficulty, but because you've learned to navigate through it. A confidence built not on illusion, but on experience. The experience of choosing stability again and again, even when shaken. This is the kind of strength that carries you through the next part of the journey. The part where adversity transforms from something you fear into something you understand, anticipate, and ultimately transcend. If this message is already helping you reflect, take a second to like the video and subscribe. Your support keeps this journey growing and helps this content reach more people who need it. Now, let's continue. There comes a moment, often unnoticed in the rush of daily life, when the weight you've been carrying settles in a single point. Not because something dramatic happened, but because you finally stopped long enough to sense what has been building inside you. It might be after a difficult conversation, or in the quiet before falling asleep, or in the stillness that follows a long day. It is in these subtle pauses that an uncomfortable truth emerges. Pressure is no longer something outside of you, it has become part of your inner landscape. Recognizing this is not a sign of weakness. It is the first step toward understanding how your mind operates when confronted with adversity. Every person carries an internal script for dealing with difficulty. Some slip into self-doubt. Others become defensive. Some try to outrun discomfort. Few take a moment to observe what is actually happening within them. But the way you interpret pressure matters far more than the pressure itself. Two people can face the same challenge and walk away with completely different outcomes. One feels defeated, the other strengthened. The difference is not luck or personality. It is the meaning each one assigns to the moment. Meaning shapes endurance. Endurance shapes identity. This becomes especially clear when discomfort brings a certain intensity to your awareness. When everything is calm, the mind drifts easily. Focus jumps from thought to thought. But when pressure rises, attention narrows. You begin to notice what you normally overlook. The tone of someone's voice, the shift in your breathing, the thoughts that pull you toward old habits. What feels like anxiety is often heightened perception, the mind alerting you to move more deliberately. If you harness this sharpened perception instead of resisting it, pressure becomes a source of clarity. You begin to see your reactions with more precision. You understand what triggers frustration, what drains your energy, what strengthens or weakens your resolve. This level of awareness does not appear during peaceful moments. It appears when something inside you is being challenged to evolve. Growth rarely feels gentle. It feels like being stretched beyond familiar limits. It feels like confusion before understanding, friction before direction. But within this discomfort hides a lesson. Your mind adapts when it has no choice. It finds new configurations, new strategies, new forms of resilience. A key part of this resilience comes from a shift in expectation. Many people fall apart not because the situation was impossible, but because they assumed life would unfold without disruption. They expected consistency. They expected ease. When reality contradicted that expectation, they interpreted it as personal failure rather than the natural rhythm of existence. But those who anticipate difficulty, not in a pessimistic way, but in a courageous way, experience fewer shocks. They understand that challenges are part of life's structure. When something goes wrong, they do not crumble. They adjust. Adjustment is often quiet, almost invisible to others, but it is profound. It is the moment where you stop fighting what is happening and start moving with it, making space for solutions to emerge instead of clinging to how things should have been. Acceptance plays a transformative role here. Many believe that accepting a difficult reality means surrendering or giving up. But acceptance is the opposite of resignation. It is the end of denial. Denial consumes energy. Acceptance frees it. The moment you stop resisting the fact that life is unpredictable, you recover the strength needed to respond with clarity. From this place, decision-making changes. You no longer choose out of panic or urgency. You choose out of understanding. You recognize what is within your influence and what is not. You stop wasting energy fighting what cannot be altered and begin focusing on what can be shaped. This shift alone reduces unnecessary suffering more than any external change ever could. As you live through these moments of conscious response, a new sense of identity emerges. You begin to notice that you are capable of staying steady in situations that once overwhelmed you. You recognize patterns you never noticed before. You choose actions you once avoided. You feel a growing sense of reliability within yourself. Not perfection, but reliability. The kind of reliability that comes from facing adversity without letting it rewrite who you are. This kind of inner steadiness is built through experience, not theory. You earn it every time you breathe instead of explode, listen instead of react, think instead of surrender to impulse. These quiet decisions accumulate. They reshape the way your mind handles tension. They transform your relationship with challenge. What once felt like a threat begins to feel like a doorway. Narrow, yes, but leading toward a stronger version of yourself. In time, challenges stop being something you fear and become something you work with. You stop expecting ease and start expecting growth. You stop seeing pressure as punishment and start seeing it as refinement. And slowly, without dramatic declarations, your center becomes stable enough to withstand what once made you break. This is where the next stage of inner development begins. The stage where discipline deepens, clarity sharpens, and you learn to navigate storms not by resisting them, but by moving through them with intention. There is a turning point in every internal journey where discipline stops feeling like a burden and begins to feel like a form of protection. Not protection from the world, but protection from the chaos that once dictated your reactions. This shift often happens quietly, without applause or sudden breakthroughs. It grows slowly, in the moments when you choose steadiness over impulse, clarity over noise, intention over habit. As this discipline unfolds, a deeper understanding emerges. Adversity is not simply an interruption. It is a mirror. It reflects the structure of your inner life, the strengths you built and the weaknesses you ignored. It exposes the beliefs you rely on and the illusions you cling to. Most importantly, it reveals the difference between who you are and who you want to become. This realization can be uncomfortable. It strips away excuses and shows you the direct connection between your reactions and your outcomes. But discomfort paired with honesty becomes one of the most powerful forces for transformation. You stop blaming circumstances and begin evaluating your responses. You stop looking outward for stability and start building it inside. And with this shift, you begin to notice something important. Every moment of pressure contains a lesson, and the lesson repeats until you learn it. If you often lose your temper, life will repeatedly place you in situations that test your patience. If you avoid confrontation, situations will arise that require firmness. If you cling to control, events will unfold that force you to release it. Life does not punish, it teaches. And lessons return until they become part of you. Once you see this pattern, difficulty loses part of its sting. It becomes a teacher rather than an adversary. You begin meeting challenges with curiosity rather than fear. What is this moment trying to develop in me? Becomes a more useful question than, why is this happening? Curiosity dissolves resentment. It opens space for growth instead of resistance. From this space grows another essential insight. Strength is not loud. It is not explosive. It does not depend on domination or force. Strength, in its most stable form, is quiet. It comes from a clear mind, a steady presence, and the refusal to be shaken by temporary discomfort. It is the ability to remain purposeful even when emotions rise, even when uncertainty intensifies, even when things unfold differently than expected. This quiet strength does not eliminate emotion. It organizes it. It does not suppress fear. It keeps fear in perspective. It does not banish doubt. It prevents doubt from taking command. It is the kind of strength that makes others feel safe in your presence, not because you control them, but because you control yourself. And this self-control becomes even more vital when the world around you turns chaotic. External noise can be overwhelming. People speak without thinking, act without reflection, and project their own anxieties onto anyone nearby. In such environments, the ability to stay internally centered becomes a rare and valuable skill. It allows you to respond from a place of intention when others respond from impulse. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is movement guided by awareness rather than agitation. This inner stillness creates a different kind of clarity, The clarity to see choices that were previously hidden under layers of urgency and emotion. You begin to notice that you always have more options than you assumed. Not easier options, but wiser ones. You can choose to wait instead of rush. You can choose to observe instead of attack. You can choose to ask instead of assume. You can choose to step back instead of engage in battles that drain your energy unnecessarily. And as this clarity expands, decision-making becomes more precise. You stop spending energy on what does not matter. You stop fighting battles that do not deserve you. You stop pursuing outcomes that only exist to satisfy ego or fear. Instead, you direct your effort toward what actually adds meaning to your life. You stop acting for reaction's sake and begin acting for purpose's sake. Purpose stabilizes. Purpose simplifies. Purpose removes noise. Once you begin living with purpose, even in small moments, your inner posture changes. You no longer move according to pressure. You move according to intention. Pressure may still surround you, but it no longer defines your direction. This evolving presence begins to affect your relationships as well. You listen more attentively, not because you lack opinion, but because you're no longer driven by the need to win every exchange. You speak with more precision, not because you're hiding emotion, but because you understand the weight your words can carry. You choose your battles more thoughtfully, saving your strength for what truly matters. People often mistake this calm for indifference. But it is not indifference, it is mastery. You are no longer consumed by every small disturbance. You do not need to react to every provocation. You no longer accept every invitation to conflict. You understand that peace is not given, it is chosen. And you choose it by refusing to be drawn into unnecessary storms. As this maturity develops, something profound takes shape, a sense of internal spaciousness. Problems that once crowded your mind now feel smaller, because your perspective has expanded. Where once there was only tension, now there is room to think, room to breathe, room to choose. This spaciousness is not escape. It is freedom. Freedom from impulsiveness. Freedom from emotional turbulence. Freedom from old patterns that once controlled you. It is the freedom that allows you to step into the next stage of your evolution, where calm becomes strength, discipline becomes identity, and resilience becomes second nature. This is the foundation on which the rest of the journey will be built. As your internal posture strengthens, you begin to see how much of life is shaped not by events themselves, but by the way you engage with them. Challenges no longer appear as random intrusions. They form patterns. Patterns that reveal what still needs development and what has already matured within you. This awareness brings a different kind of calm, one that does not depend on perfect conditions but rises out of understanding. A key part of this understanding is recognizing the subtle difference between reaction and response. Reaction is immediate, unfiltered, and often driven by old wounds or habits. Response is considered, measured, and connected to your deeper values. Most conflicts escalate because people react. Most breakthroughs occur because someone decided to respond. This distinction is what separates chaos from clarity. You start noticing how often the world tries to pull you into reaction. The sudden comment that hits a sensitive nerve, the unexpected demand that disrupts your plans, the moment of tension when someone else loses control. These situations seem designed to provoke instinctive behavior. But when you see them for what they are, you understand that restraint is not passivity, it is strength. It demonstrates that you are no longer governed by impulses that once had full control over you. This shift toward intentional action opens space for another transformative insight. Not every thought deserves your attention. The mind produces a constant flow of internal commentary. Some useful, some distorted, some shaped by fear, some shaped by memory. When you accept every thought as truth, you become trapped in a loop of mental noise. But when you learn to observe thoughts without following them, you reclaim control of your inner environment. A thought is not a command. A feeling is not a verdict. An impulse is not a decision. When you internalize this, emotional storms lose much of their power. You no longer chase every story your mind constructs. You no longer assume that discomfort means danger. You learn to let thoughts pass through without anchoring to them. This mental freedom builds the foundation for more grounded, stable action. From this stability, something else emerges. the ability to choose direction even under pressure. Many people believe they need certainty before acting, but certainty is often the final stage of understanding, not the first. Waiting for absolute clarity before moving leads to stagnation. But acting with intention, even without perfect knowledge, builds momentum. Momentum uncovers insight. Insight shapes wisdom. You begin to see that clarity does not always come before action. It often comes because of action. This realization dismantles the fear that once held you still. You no longer delay growth waiting for the right moment. You create the right moment through discipline and steady progress. You accept that life will rarely provide perfect conditions. You act anyway, not recklessly, but decisively, guided by the understanding that progress is born from movement. As your inner world becomes more organized, your relationship with difficulty changes once again. You start to see resistance as a form of training. Just as physical strength grows through controlled strain, emotional and mental strength grow through controlled confrontation with discomfort. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to practice the qualities you want to embody. Patience, clarity, courage, composure. These qualities do not develop in isolation. They develop in real situations. In the tension of disagreement, in the uncertainty of change, in the weight of responsibility. Every situation that tests you is also refining you. You become aware of this in small moments. The hesitation before speaking, the breath before responding, the pause before deciding. These are not signs of weakness. They are signs of mastery. And mastery deepens further when you realize that inner strength is not rigid. It is adaptable. It does not resist every force. It adjusts to it. Like a tree with deep roots, you remain anchored but flexible. You can bend without breaking. You can move without losing yourself. You can navigate tension without being consumed by it. This adaptability creates another level of awareness, an understanding that most disturbances are temporary. The emotions that feel overwhelming in the moment rarely hold the same weight hours later. The fear that seems unbearable loses intensity with time. The frustration that felt impossible to manage dissolves when viewed from distance. When you understand the temporary nature of emotional turbulence, you no longer give it the authority to dictate long-term decisions. This does not mean ignoring emotions. It means respecting them without surrendering to them. It means acknowledging their presence without allowing them to determine your direction. You become the observer rather than the captive. And from this vantage point, you make choices that align with your long-term goals instead of short-term impulses. Through this steady refinement, you begin to sense a greater internal cohesion. Thoughts, emotions, and actions no longer pull in different directions. They begin to align. They begin to cooperate. You feel less fragmented and more centered. Situations that once scattered your attention now sharpen it. Challenges that once exhausted you now strengthen you. Fear that once controlled you now informs you. This cohesion produces a kind of inner confidence. Not loud, not boastful, but grounded. The confidence of someone who knows they can endure difficulty without unraveling. The confidence of someone who understands their capacity to remain composed under pressure. The confidence of someone who has already walked through storms and is no longer intimidated by their arrival. This is the threshold between who you were and who you are becoming. And as this new identity stabilizes, the path forward grows clearer, a path where resilience is no longer a reaction to adversity, but a natural expression of who you are. As your inner strength matures, a new kind of vision begins to form. Not the vision that looks outward searching for guarantees, but the one that looks inward and recognizes the quiet progress shaping your character. You begin to understand that resilience is not a talent granted to a few. It is the result of a long, patient construction, built moment by moment, choice by choice, challenge by challenge. This clarity reveals something essential. Stability does not come from controlling the world around you. It comes from regulating the way you interpret and respond to it. When you stop expecting life to cooperate with your plans, you free yourself from the frustration of constant resistance. When you stop demanding that others act according to your expectations, you release the burden of trying to manage the impossible. And when you stop assuming that every difficulty is a personal attack, you recover the energy once wasted fighting realities you could not change. This liberation deepens your sense of presence. You start moving through life with a steadier rhythm, aware of each moment without being overwhelmed by it. Situations that once triggered immediate agitation now meet a more thoughtful version of you. A version shaped by experience, refined by discipline, and strengthened by intentional practice. You begin responding not from the surface of your emotions but from the depth of your understanding. This depth brings a different kind of calm. Not the fragile calm that depends on silence or perfect circumstances, but the solid calm that remains intact even inside disorder. It is the calm of someone who knows that storms are temporary, that emotions pass, that clarity returns, and that no internal state is permanent. This realization removes the urgency that once made you rush. It replaces panic with perspective. With perspective, choices become cleaner. You stop living on autopilot and begin choosing your attitudes deliberately. You become more selective about where you place your attention, what you let influence you, and which battles deserve your involvement. You notice how much peace can be preserved simply by refusing to participate in unnecessary conflict. Silence becomes a form of intelligence. Patience becomes a tool. Reflection becomes strength. At this stage, your identity shifts again. You begin to trust yourself more deeply. Not because you believe you are unshakable, but because you have evidence of your own endurance. You've already navigated confusion, frustration, fear, and uncertainty, and you're still here. Still learning. Still adjusting. Still moving. This trust creates a stability that others notice. People start coming to you for clarity, not because you have every answer, but because your presence communicates steadiness. You listen without rushing. You observe without judging. You speak only when necessary. You act with intention. Without trying, you become an example of quiet strength. A reminder that maturity is not about control, but about composure. And as this composure matures, a greater opportunity emerges. The ability to guide your own life with purpose instead of instinct. Purpose does not demand perfection. It demands direction. Even if you adjust the path along the way, you walk with intention, not confusion. You know what you value, and you make choices that reflect those values. You know what drains you, and you refuse to let those forces dominate your mental space. You know what strengthens you, and you cultivate it consistently. With purpose at your center, external chaos loses its authority. Challenges become situations to navigate, not catastrophes to fear. Pressure becomes a reminder of your capacity, not evidence of your failure. And life, instead of feeling like a sequence of unpredictable blows, becomes a landscape you move through with awareness and confidence. This is the essence of inner mastery. The ability to remain yourself even when everything around you shifts. To stand rooted without becoming rigid. To move with intention without losing your calm. To feel emotions without being commanded by them. To face difficulty without forgetting your strength. Mastery does not eliminate storms. It teaches you how to walk through them with dignity. And now, as this journey reaches its final passage, one truth becomes unmistakably clear. The strength you were searching for was never outside you. It was being built each time you paused before reacting, each time you took a deeper breath, each time you chose clarity over chaos, each time you faced discomfort instead of avoiding it. Every moment of discipline, every second of patience, every deliberate choice has brought you here, to a place where calm is not an escape, but a skill. You carry that skill with you now, and it will continue to shape everything you do from this point forward. If this message inspired you, take a moment to support the channel. Leave a comment sharing what resonated with you most, like the video to help it reach more people, and subscribe so you don't miss the next steps of this journey. Your engagement truly makes a difference.